Right. So does Washington need a timeout? That's what parents do when their kids throw a temper tantrum. The likes of what's happening on Capitol Hill yesterday, today, and frankly this weekend. Just look at the tax fight over this fight over tax cuts and the debt commission stalemate, and it's easy to see why plenty of people think political pragmatism is a thing of the past.
And perhaps we can count among them former New Jersey Governor Christie Todd Whitman. She's the founder and co-chair of the Republican Leadership Council. She's also a former administrator of the EPA. Governor, thank you for being with us. I read the piece you wrote recently about kind of this not death of moderateness, to make up a word here, but perhaps the rise of what some people would call the radical center. You think people are not as polarized as our politicians and frankly our media would have them believe.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, Savannah. The majority of the American people are somewhere in the center. We've allowed the extremes in both parties to dictate the agenda because what's happened is we really haven't been voting in the numbers that we should in things like primaries and even in general elections. I mean, this last election cycle, it still was below 40% in voter turnout. The thing that to me was good that actually validates my feelings about this is if you look at what happened at the congressional level versus the Senate level. The Senate level, where you're appealing to a big state, in those races, those candidates who engaged in the most extreme of the rhetoric, that got away from the focus on finance and the debt and taxes, they didn't win. They were defeated. Congressional districts are smaller. It's easier for a base, an energized base, to have a bigger impact. And that's where you saw some of the more extreme rhetoric support candidates and get them to win. So that tells you really that overall the American people, they want solutions right there now. They want people to talk to one another. They want them to come up with answers to these problems.
Well, though, to sort of underscore your point, the loudest voices are coming from the ideological basis. I'm going to play for you a new ad that Move On is running, attacking President Obama in the state of Iowa. Listen to this.
We, the people, want you back and need you back.
What's happened to that bold, progressive man, the elected president?
Mr. President, please do not compromise with the Republicans about extending the Bush tax cuts.
And, Governor, I want to read you a tweet from somebody from Americans for Tax Reform, Ryan Ellis, who's part of, works for Grover Norquist over there. He was tweeting about Tom Coburn and Mike Crapo, who decided to endorse the plan, very conservative Republicans, he says, by agreeing to the Simpson-Bowles tax hikes. Pledge breakers Coburn, Crapo, and Gregg have admitted they lied about taxes to get elected. I guess, Governor, if, I don't know how you solve this problem. If the ideological bases say this, and this is how you get your nominations, then you can't seem to get any compromise done in the middle.
Well, that's been the challenge, and that's why something I'm watching very closely and doing a little work with is no labels, this movement to try to get away from just saying you're Democrat or Republican, not doing away with the parties. We need the parties, not a third party, not looking for a third party candidate, but start to carve out those issues that the American people care about and saying, okay, watch your elected official. What are they saying about these issues? Are they dealing with them? Put pressure on them, because we're the only ones who can exercise that pressure. And those two quotes that you brought out are prime examples of how difficult it is getting to have this kind of dialogue in Washington. In the states, amongst people in general, you can have the conversation, and they really want to see progress. And I think both extremes are misreading this last election. It wasn't that I don't believe the American people saying just that Obama didn't go far enough to the left, that he wasn't strong enough on a left agenda. It was saying, look, he went further than we really wanted him to go. But at the same time, they weren't saying to Republicans, we want you to just say no to everything. We want you to stop all progress. They were saying, we want you to deal with these issues, not just dig in your heels. So they're looking, the American people in general are crying out for some kind of progress. But if we don't do it at the polling place, if we don't do it in letters, if we don't engage with the Congress, we're going to get more of the same.
Well, that leads me to my question, because we can diagnose the problem for politicians, which is they seem to pander to interest groups or primary voters. We know the problem with the media, which loves to emphasize division. But what about these moderates? I mean, our NBC News Wall Street Journal polls showed 37% identify themselves as moderate. But by its very nature, if you're a moderate, are you just not as engaged in the political process? You're too busy living your life? I mean, does there have to be something like a radical center or a radical moderate movement rising up and getting involved?
Well, it really does. Actually, that was the last chapter of my book, It's My Party Too. It was a time for radical moderates, which seems like an oxymoron, but it's what we need. And if you look back at the history of how policies have been moved, and I often use this example when I'm talking to people, to me the most recent example of how you can move politics was the Terry Schiavo case. No matter what you thought about the ethics of whether
Right.
disconnecting her was murder or not, it was, if you looked at the polls after Congress had acted, it was 70 to 80% of the American people said Congress never should have intervened in that case. So that means 20 to 30% of the American people got Congress to act in 4 days and the president to cut short a vacation and come back and
Right.
vote on the issue. And that's
That is
because
amazing.
that's because the people, the moderates, the people who thought Congress, whether, and again, no matter what they believed about the actual ethics
Right.
of the issue,
Right.
who said Congress shouldn't intervene, argued with themselves and their television sets, and they didn't communicate to Congress, whereas the other side did.
All right, Governor Christie Whitman, we have to leave it there. It's always good to have you on. Thanks for joining us,
pleasure.
and good luck with your No Labels movement. And we will be right back with a little shallow love.